Assalamu alaikum, students. Welcome to today's discussion. Our previous lecture encompassed various creativity techniques that could be adopted, practiced in order to polish our creativity skills and enabling us to be better contributor towards organizational creativity and innovation potential. So for a quick review, first thing that we discussed was brainstorming. Anyone? What is brainstorming?
Generating as many ideas as possible.
So what's the rule?
Focus on quantity, not quality.
2 pizza rule. How could you forget pizzas? The number of participants should be enough that can easily consume 2 pizzas. Focus should be on quantity, number of ideas rather than quality of ideas. While you conduct this session, the brainstorming session, the hierarchical positions are to be ignored. The boss needs to turn off his bossy switch for that particular period of time. And all of us, or all of the participants, should be encouraged to utter whatever is coming to their mind. Another thing was hitchhiking of ideas. So if someone postulates an idea or bounces an idea, someone else can pull it further and extend it further. The second was mind mapping, and we discussed that it's basically a graphical technique that involves both convergent and divergent thinking. So while we create this map, the very basic and simple technique is to write down the main problem area that you are trying to find solution for in the midst of the sheet, ideally in landscape mode, and you tend to figure out the major nodes from which other extensions can be developed. So in our example, if you can recall, we created how to spend vacations. And what are the major nodes, if you can recall, in Pakistan or abroad? In Pakistan, it was further extended into northern area, Islamabad and southern areas. And depending upon that what preferences we have in northern area, we further extended those nodes to sub-nodes and detailing that what are the possible activities that could be done there. So by extending that map, northwards, southwards, what to do in Islamabad or your home city, and then the abroad end when it is extended, at the end of the day you get a sheet that details graphically all the options with their possibilities of entertainment or whatever activities that could be done. And it could be a good way to analyze that which activity you should be choosing. Any idea about, particularly about a product, what we tend to do is that we try to come up with a model with those features that are in our mind. So when you make the product physically, you tend to come across those issues and those problems that you otherwise had ignored during your thought process. And once you have made your prototype, you are again in a position where you can take reflection from the customers probably, that how are they finding it. And they could again give very valuable input which can be utilized to improvise that model. And that prototype later on could be developed into a real-life product. G?
Sometimes companies को product introduce करवाती है और check करती है उसकी करके, तो वो prototype होता है.
That is test marketing. For instance, if there was Head and Shoulder wants to introduce some new variant that also includes sarson ka tel as well. So rather than spending all the money on its production, marketing and its logistics and making its availability, ensuring its availability throughout Pakistan, what they tend to do is that they could select a particular city and they could give free samples probably and ask the customer for reflection. And then much easier way could be that if the samples were given to the barbers or the beauty parlors in particular, where the females come and get their hair washed, so a quick reflection could be gotten there. Right, so that is altogether a different thing. Prototype is like what you tend to do for yourself.
आए हुए हैं अभी coffee, like उन्हें अपना taste
taste improvement. So
That is not a prototype. That is a promotional activity. They want,
they want people to know what it tastes like after
So-
they've improved the taste. That's right.
Have
Because they've changed
They have
something
changed it. They
in
have
their-
the 3-in-1 packs. They have every day in it, and the taste is also very different. Much
at
better.
time, the companies, in order to familiarize their customer with the new flavor, tend to go for these kind of activities. Again, the focus is that even in previously, I have not been a great fan of this product, for instance, Nescafe 3-in-1. So if I got a chance to taste it this time, probably I could like it and switch to using this product, which I'm definitely not going to do. Mix and match.
Try.
It is
I'm a black coffee person. Mix and match. क्या था जी?
from different groups.
From different groups. And where did this idea come from? Thomas Edison. And I told you that this is the activity that he would usually do with his intern, is give him some cash and ask him to fetch few random products, and then for the rest of the day he would match one product against the other in two different groups and try to come up with new ideas using the combination of various products. And we tried this technique as well, and I guess we did pretty good. Last but not the least was attribute listing chart. What was that? That was an example. What is attribute listing?
Existing product.
Very simply, it is listing of attributes. So you analyze the various attributes of the product or the service that is under consideration. So you find as many attributes as possible and write them down as headers horizontally. And then for each header, for each attribute, you list down vertically the existing options and the new possible options. And once you have got this comprehensive chart done, then you can go for picking interesting combinations as per the requirement of your customers or the company management. Right, Ji? Clear? Good. Today, we are going to further understand, or at least try to further comprehend the idea of innovation. As of now, we have said that, yeah, creativity leads to innovation, but we've also mentioned that, yes, introduction of first telephone set was again an innovation. We consider that as innovation, and we also consider an upgraded model of a latest mobile as innovation as well. Although the impact of both the innovation has been altogether different in context of scale. So we will try to comprehend the idea and understand it further. There are two contexts through which we can understand innovation. The categorization of innovation could be done in, firstly, by analyzing the forms of innovation in which it is introduced, or it could be in the degree of novelty. What is novelty? Newness. If your idea carries newness, it is basically having novelty in it. So first, let's get started with the forms of innovation. The degree of novelty is basically types of innovation. There are three principal forms of innovation: product, service, and process. Any examples, Ji? Product innovation. Tube light, good. LEDs. Touchscreen phones. Okay, let's analyze it in depth. You tend to see the product innovation in consumer products. I mean, all the products that you were telling me about when I've asked you about the examples, they're all consumer goods. We all are using it. To be more specific, let's talk about Dyson. We all know what vacuum cleaners are, right? So a typical vacuum cleaner has got this structure. It carries a small bogie and a pipe is attached with it with suction mechanism. And traditionally it would carry a paper bag that could be amplified or it could be replaced. And that's how the normal vacuum cleaners were being manufactured and sold. Mr. Dyson, he was working for a firm that was making these traditional vacuum cleaners. He worked upon an idea, on a technology that he called Dyson dual cyclone technology. And using this technology, the suction mechanism was improved amazingly, and this model did not require any bag. But when he tried to sell this idea or give this idea to the employers that were managing the firm in which he was working, they turned down the idea. So ultimately, he started manufacturing his own vacuum cleaner, and they became an instant hit. So if we were to, for example, categorize cars in Pakistan, so there's Mehran and there's Corolla GLI, for instance. So Dyson is now the GLI of vacuum cleaner market in developed countries. Another example, iPhone altogether changed the kind of experience that we would usually get from a phone. Before that, it would be a device that we would tend to use for making phone calls and text messages only, or view the images that were already stored by default from the factory. iPhone made it possible for us to use our phone as iPod, whereby you could get all of your library downloaded on your phone. On the go, you could enjoy your favorite music. Connectivity to the internet was amazing. Connectivity to the iStore, where you could easily download your songs, was much better. Sound quality is much better. The camera quality is much better. So it's altogether a different experience as compared to all the products that were existing at that point of time. Product innovation. And this is the kind of innovation that we can see, because products are present physically. You can touch them, you can see them. And what's the advantage for pursuing product innovation? It helps persuade customer to keep buying your products. Imagine Samsung giving up on product innovation.
No one would value
Maybe for next 2-3 years there would be somebody, but after 2 to 3 years nobody would be even remembering what Samsung stands for.
So for example,
Sony Ericsson, thank you. Nokia.
Nokia did invent the new phones that.
Yeah, Nokia. This is usually an example that we actually utilize in the topic of strategy. Okay, while back in 90s and early 2000, Nokia used to be the king. Be it 3310, right? Be it 6210, a premium quality phone, slimmer model and a quality model that the executives would usually like to carry. They had another model, Sirocco, with the same operating system, but it was done in steel and it was expensive, and people would be like, yaar, style ke saath wo slide karta hai. They thought that the customer will stick to us because we are doing these kind of innovations. Their focus was on this marginal improvement. They would change one feature or the other, expecting that the customers are more than satisfied. But one force that they were unable to forecast, or rather they were able to see that, but they couldn't handle it, was Android. On top of that, forget Nokia, talk about BlackBerry. BlackBerry, it used to be like a premium product. All the executives would be proud of carrying, they have got this BlackBerry, and they would like to text each other in confidential ways, untraceably. And they used to think that, yeah, whatever happens to Nokia, we are safe. Thanks to Android plus internet, plus WhatsApp.
Yes. That's what's up.
All the edge that they were carrying was diluted in no time. And who has got the BlackBerry BB generated? Anyone? Has anyone installed the BlackBerry app? BB Pen. They tried to re-establish themselves in Android models, but people were making fun out of it, that yeah, I've also got it generated, but it's useless. So product innovation is important, particularly in the industries that are technology intensive. It's not a matter of choice if you are ignoring product innovation. Jewelry is safe.
LG और सर Motorola सर LG ने भी काफी different innovations किए. उन्होंने एक modular phone निकाला था अभी recently जिसमें आप extra cameras attach कर सकते हैं. एक उन्होंने जिस तरह एक वो bend वाला phone निकाला था LG ने. इसी तरह Motorola ने काफी मतलब different innovations किए, लेकिन still उनका वो उस तरह से नहीं है मतलब.
We all know that Sony is the leader of TV technology or LED technology. All the new technologies are usually introduced by Sony. But once they are introduced, in 6 months' time, the product that they tend to sell for, let's say, I'll tell you about my experience. I wanted to buy an LCD. Went to Hyperstar, now the Carrefour, and inquired about the prices. The 55 inches Sony with somehow limited features was being sold for 1,42,000. Right? Someone, a friend of mine, took me to College Road. There I bought a 55 inches LCD, China made, and the offer was that which brand do you want it to carry? Sony, Samsung, LG, whatever you like, you can get it. And it carries Android software, internet connectivity. You can do video conference in it, use Facebook, YouTube. I mean, whatever features Sony could offer, they're already on offer. 42,000 as compared to 1,42,000. Why not have 3 LCDs in your home rather than one? Okay. Earlier, the software used to be a problem. Sony would keep it exclusive to itself. Android has basically changed the game. Android software is even available for you. You start assembling LCDs, install that Android software, and you can sell LCDs with your own name. Right? Again, we do this matrix in marketing, and in that there's one particular quadrant that actually focuses upon the product innovation. And this kind of innovation, as is the case in the consumer products that me and you tend to utilize, it is also applicable in the industrial products. The second form of innovation is service innovation. And here we have got 2 dimensions. Either the existing businesses can start offering their products in a new way. That again can trigger the service innovation. Or altogether new businesses could be made out of service innovation. Let's try understanding few examples. Let's start with Ryanair. Avoiding uncertainty. Michael O'Leary, while everyone else was trying to avoid new aircrafts, he was the chap who went for buying new aircrafts. Let's go 25 years back. If I had to buy a ticket from Islamabad to London for say, let's say, of Singapore Airways. So if I'm the customer, and here is Singapore Airways marketing department. That is actually responsible for sales of the tickets. I couldn't contact Singapore Airways marketing department directly. What would happen that I would go to my local travel agent who would contact the regional or the provincial level travel agent who would in turn talk to the person who was holding the national agency of Singapore Airways. So this is national level transport agent who would be in contact with Singapore Airways. Right, Ji? So let's say if I'm buying a ticket worth 100,000, I wouldn't be surprised that if 15,000 out of it was being divided among these three entities. And the revenue going to Singapore Airways would be how much? 85. And then comes online ticket sale, where you're enabled from your convenience of your home to go online, browse through all the available options, dates, the number of flights in each day are detailed, and as per your convenience, you can select whichever flight is suitable for you. And if you buy the ticket online, you are basically getting these three entities out of the equation. And this process is called disintermediation. These three entities are the intermediaries. And by the usage of technology, we have basically disintermediated these entities. Now, even if Singapore Airways sells me ticket for 95,000, they get extra bit of cash, and I also get a bit of relief. Clear, Ji? Understood? Usually, the airlines operate from major airports. PIA would usually fly to Manchester Airport from Lahore, to Heathrow or to Glasgow Airport. Ryanair does not operate from main airports. What they tend to do is that instead of flying from the main city airports that are expensive to operate from, they go for the smaller city airports that are not very far from the main cities. I'm sure that all of us are familiar with Heathrow Airport of London. It may surprise you to know that there are 4 other airports in London. Manchester Airport is a main airport in England. Liverpool John Lennon Airport is only 40 minutes drive from Manchester. So you can find Ryanair flight operating from Liverpool Airport instead of Manchester. You will find Ryanair's flight operating from Stansted or City Airport, London, instead of Heathrow. So they get to save money there. Another way they are trying to save cost, and again that is a very, what I can say, very simple, basic, logical understanding of the business model. PIA, for instance, operates a full-fledged kitchen. This is like a plaza where they tend to cook that terrible food that we get served with during the flights. Ryanair does not operate any of such facilities. You know what they do? There's a sandwich shop at John Lennon Airport where you can buy a sandwich for, say, £3.50. Ryanair gets its sandwich made from this shop, and that too on wholesale rate. And as soon as you ascend in the air, and at height of 35,000 feet, if by chance, which is most probably to happen, you feel hungry and you ask for something to eat, you get served with the same sandwich at a price of £20. right? So Ryanair has basically restructured the whole business model of the airline. Another interesting thing, if you go for a reservation, what date is today? 13th of March. Let's say April, May, June, July, August, September. Let's say I get a week-long holidays approved from my department, and I wish to spend that in Cologne, a city based in Germany, and I'm living in London. If I am the first person to go to Ryanair's website and I'm the first person to explore that flight, you know what price would be offered to me?
Discount?
Yeah, how much? 50%?
10 to 20%.
10 to 20%, good. 50%? Sorry to disappoint you. £1 only, plus taxation, that you get to pay anyway, irrespective of what airline you utilize.
तो ये ज़्यादा expensive होगी।
How?
सर हर चीज़ की extra charging कर रहे हैं।
Exactly. That's their basic business model. Apart from a small cup of water, they won't offer you anything. Because they think that their business is to get from point A to point B, not entertain you or feed you during that flight. And that is a model that we usually tend to assume that this is airline's responsibility to keep us well fed. Now, let's say I was the first one and I got this offer, and Mahad, what's your name? Mahad? Mahad from his jewelry shop gets online and goes for browsing for the same flight. The website is so smart that as soon as it detects that the demand for this flight is increasing, he's not going to get an offer of £1. He may get an offer of £15 or £10. So, based upon the demand and the supply of the seat for one particular flight, the website itself determines what price to offer. And let's say if someone wanted to fly on that plane on 13th of September, he or she will have to pay the full-fledged price, that being maybe £120 or £100.
Shouldn't the cost increase with the increase in demand? The cost of
The price should increase. Let's say on the same day, 5 people looked for the same flight. So the price will get a hike of, let's say, £30–40 on the same day, while we are on the 13th of March browsing for a flight on 13th of September. So as soon as the demand increases, so would be the offer price. Fahimta? Samajh aayi? Another example, ji. Insurance. I'm not sure how many of you will turn out to be entrepreneurs, but I'm confident that at least you will try to pursue some careers. One type of salesman that you are bound to interact with, and they won't get away, irrespective of what you do, they are the insurance salesmen, who are in business of selling fear. One fine day, you are sipping hot coffee in your office, and here comes the salesman reminding you, insurance is basically based upon the law of big numbers. What they tend to do is that they use statistics that, yeah, if we sell like 100 or 100 policies, out of these hundreds, 5 are bound to have accidents. Out of those 100, 1 is bound to die. 2 of them are going to get incapacitated, and the rest will only get their car hit. So depending upon their estimates, they figure out that what premium they need to charge from everybody in order to stay profitable. That is basically the business of insurance.
Sir, I have a question regarding insurance. Sir, जैसे you have a car insurance, ठीक है, आपका फिर से और आपकी गाड़ी चोरी हो जाती है, तो वो इंश्योरेंस रिकवर करेगा?
It would depend upon what kind of insurance you have got. The very basic requirement is to have a third party insurance, whereby if you are into an accident, at least the loss that is incurred to the other party, it would be covered by the insurance. If you go for comprehensive cover, it would cover everything, but again the premium would be accordingly higher. Insurance guys ji, so I'm telling you, a person physically coming to your office and they would love to come to your office every other week until you sign up their documents. That's how they are trained to, that's how they are trained, and they are very consistent and persistent. Now imagine a sales force leaving insurance office every day hunting for customer. The company has to pay for their salary, their commission, their transport, right? Everything is to be taken care by the company. One of the chaps thought, why not try selling insurance using phone? Reducing the cost and reducing the risks to employees. So what they did, Direct Line Insurance for instance is operating on a model where they have set up a call center, and the computer generates the calls and they get this detail that who is the respondent, who is the guy who is living there. So they will, according to this demographic information that they have, they would offer the products that are most relevant to them, and they're getting business this way. So altogether the existing insurance business has been servicely innovated by offering the same products in altogether a new manner. Now earlier I explained the phenomenon of disintermediation, where we were trying to get other entities away from the bond between the customer and the supplier. The new model these days is intermediation. Example दीजिए. Any experience where an intermediary has been introduced between you and the service provider.
So tourist, when you go different franchises, Food Panda, yes.
Online shopping. Online shopping.
Food Panda, sir.
When you want a house on rent.
Food Panda. How about Uber and Kareem here?
Yeah.
A very simple example. Earlier, as a customer, you would try to find the taxi driver who would be the supplier of that service. Now what has happened is, with Uber and Kareem, now they have become the intermediary connecting these two entities. So it can go both ways. The technology can facilitate disintermediation, whereby it helps in reducing cost, but in this case the technology although has introduced an intermediary, but alongside it has improvised the standardization of the service. Safety security elements are again associated, and you tend to feel safer as compared to a traditional taxi service. Food Panda was a good example. Have you utilized the service?
Yes.
How does it work?
सर आप उनको ऑर्डर करते हैं, वो फिर आपके रिस्पेक्टिव आपने जिसे भी मंगवाना होता है वो मतलब आपके जो डिलीवरी गाय होता है वो फूड पैंडा का होता है. अगर रेस्टोरेंट का नहीं भी है, अगर वो आपको घर डिलीवर नहीं भी करते तो वो फूड पैंडा.
How much did they charge you? Very reasonable. So again, technology plus introduction of physical delivery of service innovation. Now that's where we have seen that existing products and services are being delivered in a new fashion. How about being in a situation where you come up with altogether new businesses because of innovation? Anybody familiar with lastminute.com? No? That's eBay, that's not lastminute.com.
Online gift shop.
No, it's not an online gift shop. Listen to me carefully. Irrespective of what airline you pick, no airline can claim that they've got 100% capacity filled all the times. There have to be some vacant seats, if not in every flight, in every other flight. So is the case with hotels. Yes, in season they may be fully subscribed, but otherwise there is always an element or a certain percentage which stays vacant. What lastminute.com does is that it tends to buy the expected unutilized capacity of airlines and hotels at a much cheaper rate and sells them cheaply to the customer who are the last minute subscribers.
तो मतलब पहले ही book कर लेते
Booker, they have already bought that capacity at a much cheaper rate, and at a certain premium they tend to give the airline tickets as well as the hotel stays to the customers. And it is all enabled through technology. Altogether a new business model, something that was not existing earlier. Another good example, before I go to eBay, sorry, okay, eBay G, what is eBay? Online shopping? What sort of shopping?
anything and everything.
Anything and everything? Okay. Here, imagine me having a bicycle that I used during my school and college, and that is still lying in attic of my house in the storeroom, and I wish to sell it. What options do I have? Local market, I mean, imagine there is no OLX. OLX again is a very small application of the eBay business model. Earlier, what options I would have? I could go to the local cycle repair guy and beg him for an offer, or I could clean it well, get it serviced a bit, and post few posters around that cycle is available for sale. But in case of eBay, I was able to highlight my product to a wider audience using very clear specifications and photographs, right? So how do you do it? Let's say if I was to sell a bicycle, I would set up a timeline. Let's say in next 4 days I'm open for bids for selling this bicycle, and let's say the bid closing time is 12 at night on Sunday, and I set the minimum bidding price at rupees 4,000, which means that I'm not going to take any offer under 4,000. So let's say Taimur, who is not present here, goes online and he's looking for a bicycle and he finds it to be a reasonable offer. So he is the first person who says that yes, I'm ready to buy, and he makes a bid of 4,000. So as of that point of time, he is the one who can take away this bicycle. But how can we ignore Mahad? Mahad is also after buying a bicycle, and since he's a very shrewd businessman, he knows that he does not need to spend 15,000 or 20,000 on a new bicycle. Rather, he can buy a bicycle in a cheaper rate that he can get worked upon. So he considers it to be worthwhile buying for at around 4,200. 4,200, yeah. So there could be other bids as well. So by the time of the conclusion of the bidding time, the person with highest bid is the winner, and he has to do the transaction using PayPal, or nowadays online transactions are very convenient. And once that transaction has been made, he can go and collect the product. And now the people are so smart that they're actually running stores selling watches and what not on eBay. And the best part is that you get an international audience without having to pay a single penny as a fee. You mentioned OLX for selling bicycle, a very good service, but it is basically a very small segment of what the eBay has to offer. In my recent experience, last week, I wanted to buy a car, and in OLX I wanted to buy a Corre. So in OLX I was getting these ads asking for 500,000 for 2002 model, and when I got to see that car and I took my mechanic along, it was not even worth 325,000. So OLX is not a great place to buy. I met another car dealer who told me that he tends to advertise those cars on OLX that are hard to sell. Generally, the common consumer would take the bait of relatively lower price and would buy the product that is otherwise little controversial to sell. Sorry? You are a little too late, I bought it last week. The choka is gone. Alright Ji, the third form of innovation is process innovation. And what it is, the process innovation would usually carry a huge impact on the society, yet it is least to be recognized with, and sometimes it's least visible. Interesting example is Alistair's float glass manufacturing process. Nowadays, if you visit Blue Area, our center of plazas, so you get to see lots of plazas which are actually walled by glasses, right? During last century, and particularly in the early century, the glass manufacturing process was crude, and there was lots and lots of breakage in it. And what would happen that when the sheet would be formed, let's say 40% of that sheet would get broken during that manufacturing process. So that broken glass would again sent to be kiln, to be melted again, and to be formed in sheet again. And this cycle will continue. So glass, because kiln required a lot of energy, so it was an expensive piece of material. And then came this chap, Alistair, and he used some tin coatings in order to manufacture the glass sheet. And it reduced the wastage, or rather rework, to drastically, which clearly had a huge impact on the costs. And it was the result of this glass manufacturing process, Alistair's, that the price of the glass fell so drastically that it became a preferred choice for decoration. And now, irrespective of which city you go to, you get to see homes and buildings and plazas that are basically glass coated all around. Earlier, that used not to be the case because the glass was expensive due to inefficient manufacturing process.
So what kind of coating you use?
Tin. Another example is B2B e-commerce. Let's take example of a textile exporting unit. they usually have this merchandising department who would stay in touch with the customer and keep updating them about the progress of their orders. So let's say if you were exporting t-shirts to Gap, so once the contract is done, the Gap representative would like to know that what progress is being made on their, let's say, an order of 100,000 t-shirts. So they are to be kept updated that yes, we have bought the yarn for that lot. Now the yarn is being knitted, the cloth has been made out of it, it has been dyed, it has been finished, it is being cut, it is being stitched, it is being packed, whatever that whole process is. So before the introduction of internet, all of this information used to be exchanged via telephone calls. And that was an expensive affair. Now what has happened is that as you can track your TCS shipments, the similar thing is happening in B2B e-commerce. So for each order, the customers are getting one username and password, and all they need to do is just use that to monitor the progress of their order. And imagine that how much labor is relieved because of non-usage of telephone. So they get in touch via phone only when there is some disaster going on, if they are really falling short of the targets that they are supposed to. Another interesting example of innovation was this thing called Megabus service. It's based in United Kingdom. So the main carrier of bus, if we wish to travel from one city to another, from one city to another, is National Express. And let's say if you're traveling from London to Manchester, it would cost you around £35. But for the same travel, if you subscribe to megabus.com, you only travel by spending £10 only. And how do they manage it? They manage it in this way, that they do not have any sales office. All of the tickets are to be bought online. And I'm not talking about today, it was happening 15 years back. So you would pay online using your debit card, and you'll receive an SMS. And in order to board the bus, you show the SMS and you can hop in the bus. And they again would not use the main bus stations. What they would do is that the nearest bus stop outside the bus station, they would tell you to be there at this time, and if you are there, the bus would come and it would let you in. So by keeping the other costs low, they were able to transfer the whole saving, or rather sharing the saving with their customer, which again had a very clear preference because the difference between the prices that were being offered was amazingly high. £35 versus £10. And again, just like lastminute.com, they ended up buying seats in the trains as well. So once I got a chance to travel from Glasgow to Manchester, which otherwise would cost me around £70, and I got that ticket for £15 only. And how did that happen? Based on the model of lastminute.com. Megabus contacted that train service that yes, you are selling tickets, but this percentage is not going to sell anyway. Sell them to us for £5 or £7, and they could charge a little premium on that. Right, G? Now that concludes the forms of the business. So there are basically three forms of business. We can see innovation happening in product, services, and processes. Now, to see the impact of process innovation, let's take this comparison table. Before introduction of mass production, conveyor belt mechanism at Ford car industry, the cars would be manufactured in a way usually how our local mechanics operate. I mean, it's a one-man or two-man team who would open the whole engine, repair it, fix it piece by piece, and usually they would do one engine a day. They cannot do two because it is time taking. And that's how the cars were manufactured in 1913 when the craft production mechanism was in place. Then after introduction of the mass production moving clear conveyor belt by Ford, just see the comparison. The assembly of engine that earlier used to take 594 minutes, it was taking only 226 minutes, a reduction of 62% of effort. Magneto, 20 minutes to 5 minutes, 75% saving. Fixing of axle from 150 minutes to 26.5 minutes, a reduction of effort of 83%. Components being fixed into vehicle from 750 minutes to 93 minutes, a saving of whopping 88%. And that's how you make Mehran affordable. By doing this mechanized production using robots. So no one knows what goes in this production process, but yet we are the ones who tend to enjoy the cost benefits as a result of this introduction of innovation. So just to have a quick review, product innovation, Walkman was one innovation, we'll discuss it again as well. Television spreadsheet, Excel. Services made, telephone insurance, credit card was the service innovation. Internet bookstore, what's its name? Jeff Bezos? Amazon, good. No-frill airlines, Ryanair is a no-frill airline or budget airline. Then you have got process innovation, float glass, single minute exchange, and this one is interesting, computerized airline reservation. Earlier, again, all the travel agents had to contact by phone to confirm if the flights are available or not. With introduction of this system, they could do it online using their computer machines. Now, the other dimension in which the innovation could be analyzed is the types of innovation. And for that, we would use Henderson and Clark's innovation framework. In order to understand this framework, we need to understand first that all of the products are basically systems. And every system is composed of components. Take your ball pen, for instance. It is basically a system that comprises of what? Look at your ball pen. Tell me about its components.
A small ball and ink.
A small ball, tip, spring, clutch, button, the main barrel in which everything is fixed.
Glass, plastic.
That's the barrel.
The ink.
Ink. All of these things are the components, and when they're fixed in a certain symmetry, they work together and they form a system that we tend to utilize as a product. So there are two kinds of knowledges that are required for understanding the types of innovation. First one being the component knowledge. That is knowledge of components that perform well-defined function within broader system. So whatever components you have identified for ball pen, you can easily tell me that which components does what task. And those components are put together, they form system, and the knowledge of system, that is architectural knowledge, is how the components are integrated and linked together. Sorry? Did you relate to the earlier example of ball pen? For instance, the ball pen that you are holding, what components is it carrying? Ball. What is the purpose of ball? to move freely and let the ink out in an adequate quantity, right? What is the function of the ink filament? It works as a storage for ink. What is the function of this rubber grip? It facilitates your grip on it. What is the function of this clutch button that is behind? To keep it locked when you do not need it, and you can press it when you need it. So each component is doing a well-defined task or function. And when they are grouped together, they make a ball pen that is basically a system, right? So the knowledge of each component is component knowledge, and the knowledge of whole system is the architectural knowledge for that product.
जो वैसे बॉल पेन में एक छोटी सी लाइक अगर रबर अटैच करके जिससे वो टक टक की आवाज बंद हो जाए, क्योंकि काफी लोगों को इरिटेशन होती है, this can be innovation.
You can go for the other marker type of when you do not need to. Pointer ball pen is an already available solution. And by the way, we used to have those yellow ball pen, the piano ones. They did not have clutch in it. That itself was an innovation. Usually one would lose the cap, and they ended up making these clutch ball pens that you do not even need the caps. Right, Ji? Now it's a good example that how the variation in components and systems work out. Earlier we discussed ball pen. Now let's talk about washing machine. The components include what? Motor, pump. What else?
Dryer. The dryer. We have dryer nowadays.
Okay.
And pipe.
Programmer, through which you can set the time. Chassis, door and body. And system is the way in which these components are configured. Now, as is written here, when the washing machines were introduced, or rather 10 years ago, the RPM, that being the revolution per minute for the motor, used to be 1000, 20 years ago. And with improvement in materials and in the structure of the motors, today you get to enjoy 1600 RPMs. Now that was one way of seeing innovation, whereby you have increased the speed of the motor. The other way is to change the system altogether. Automatic नहीं थी, vertical से horizontal, right? And with additional function of dryer. You need not to pull them out first and put them into dryer and run that again separately, right? So earlier it was the improvement in components which led to incremental innovation, and when the system is improvised, it is basically architectural innovation. But we will add another dimension to it shortly. Please note this down.
This table?
Yeah, this figure rather. Right, G. This way you have got system. So you have basically two choices. Either in the innovation the system remains unchanged or it is changed. This way you have got the components. Either they are reinforced or improved, or they are overturned, or they are new together altogether. Right? Now based upon these two dimensions, now we will try to understand various types of innovation. First one, G, incremental innovation. In incremental innovation, the system is the same, but the components are improvised. So one mobile phone with improvised RAM is basically example of incremental innovation. The system is the same, but the component has been improved a bit. And the components are not radically altered. And it is usually result of improvement in knowledge and material. Yeah, talk about this plastic syringe that we are using these days. Earlier it used to be glass that our physician used to keep boiling all the times, with the assumption that it is killing all the germs. Not anymore. Thanks to improvement in knowledge of plastic, that the cost has become so low that everybody can now afford a plastic disposable syringe. Right? Next is your radical innovation, where you have got altogether new system and new components. And this is the innovation that actually shakes the world. And it is often associated with introduction of altogether a new technology. For example, telephone. Do you consider it as a radical innovation? The first telephone, new system, new components.
The new introduction of television.
Television itself was again a radical innovation. Personal computer, the jet aircraft. Earlier it used to be propeller based aircraft. The third one is modular, whereby you keep the system almost the same, but you tend to add new modules to it. An interesting example is the clockwork radio. Radio we all know is a full-fledged product, right? But in far-flung areas of Africa, where there is no availability of electricity, they came up with these windable radios, where you can wind them and the potential energy is ultimately transformed into electricity, which runs the radio, and they end up listening to the news and weather updates. So altogether, a new module has been introduced in an already available system. And last but not the least is your architectural innovation, in which you tend to utilize more or less the same components, which are kind of reformed in one way or the other, and the system is changed. Before introduction of Walkman, you can still probably recall the old movies where the black community from United States would be carrying the decks on their shoulder and then trying to dance with such huge load. Thanks to introduction of Walkman, which made their job quite easier. Same components reconfigured in a smaller way. And you have yet another application of G.
Would be a radical innovation or an architectural innovation?
Rather than asking me this question, I would like you to reflect based upon two dimensions. Think if the system is new or just the components are new.
Components are new.
The system is new. There is no physical movement. There is no cassette. The system is altogether new. Right, Ji? And that concludes our lecture. Thank you so very much for your patience as usual.